Hello and welcome, everybody. This is Jeff Bird with Jeffrey Bird Coaching, and today we have a really fun episode here. I'm with Christina Kimbrough, the founder of Freelife, which is a sober group that does all kinds of cool stuff. Very different than any sober group I've ever seen before. So we'd like to let her share a little bit about what's happened since the last year. She had just started last year when we did one of these, and so I wanted to give her a chance to come and share about her year. So, Christina, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Jeff. Yeah, we were talking before. I was like, how has it been a year? I mean, it's so
Right.
wild. Yeah, time has been going fast, but then we were also talking like sometimes it feels slow, right? Because you're just like in the day-to-day grind. I think when I look overall, it feels fast, but the day-to-day sometimes it's like, oh gosh.
Oh my goodness. There's a quote somebody said that's like the year is short, but the day is long.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. That's so good.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to, so to recap, man, a lot has happened. I think so to give people just a quick background if they don't know Free Life, we are a small business. I'm 4 years sober from an addiction to alcohol. And I created Free Life just to connect with people that don't drink, whether they're in recovery like I am, or just whether they're looking to socialize without alcohol. The big difference I would say from last year is, well, one, we're monetized. So before last year, we were, a social group, which we still are, doing all kinds of fun events. But this time we have a non-alcoholic bar, which is really cool. So it's really what it sounds like. We have a 4 foot pop-up bar that we take to events, private events, and we have a bartender now who makes all kinds of non-alcoholic drinks. So it's been really cool. We've definitely expanded.
So yeah, and I've been to a couple of those, and I found out. I mean, I know mocktails is becoming a famous word, a buzzword around here now. But some of them, I was very surprised. I really like.
Yeah.
I know there's one brand in particular, the Curious Elixirs,
Yes.
and that was fun. We did some taste testing one time when we had the pop up bar in your backyard, and that was really cool. It's like I was like, wow, that is really shockingly good. It's like
Yes.
that's not something I just want to hold in my hand to be cool and fit in, look like I've got a drink when I don't. That's like actually something that's good for you. It's got herbs and spices and adaptogens and other things in it. So it's like this is really good. This is really good
Yes.
for my body and it's really tasty.
Yes. Yeah, that's been the most exciting thing. So we've been growing in tandem with the industry. The non-alcoholic industry is just blown up over the last year. I mean, the last couple years, but year really. And it's so interesting. I don't know why, but I think people like for a number of reasons have said, like you said, they want something tasty. And I think so the idea used to be that a mocktail was just like soda water and maybe a
Right.
lime or something.
Right.
But now you drink them and they taste good. You're like, oh, I want to drink this to drink it, because it tastes good. It's good for me, low sugar. And you're absolutely right. Curious Elixirs is one of our favorite brands.
Yeah, it really is one of the best. And this is catching on. My
Yeah.
wife Angie and I were at a wedding reception for local realtor, and he had actually rented out the Virginia Air and Space Museum.
Oh,
And
wow.
but I was shocked that he had mocktail bars there. He
Nice.
recognized that it was so popular, and then there was a woman back actually behind the bar mixing mocktails, and one of them had like rosemary in it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like so good, and it was interesting. Like I remember back when I used to drink, because I'm 4 years too, just like you, sober. So I remember one time for a birthday present, this woman from Bangkok gave me a book called the Cocktail Bible. So I could
Yeah.
look up these different recipes, and I was out buying all this stuff and grinding nutmeg and putting all these creams and toppings on the
Yeah.
thing and stuff. And now it's like the same kind of thing without the alcohol.
Yep.
And what I'm finding, I love you to unpack this a little bit for us, but I find that really it's not about the alcohol. All that does is make you feel bad the next day. It's bad for your health. It's bad for your liver has to convert it twice because it's a toxin. It's bad for your brain. You can have alcohol related dementia, but it's really about the social aspect of it. It's just like
Yep.
being around people, having a great conversation. My wife and I have had some wonderful conversations at your events, and it's like this is so cool. It's like I talked about all kinds of things, talked about brain health, talked about all sorts of neat stuff. Talked about military service, how it is to be a military wife, and then we were just talking about that. And but it's like all of these really cool things happen. So can you talk a little bit about the just the value of the social aspect and how much that means to people?
Yes, and I love that you touched on this because I'm forever having these conversations, thinking about them. And I what I love and see the power in non-alcoholic drinks is one, you're right, they do bring us together. And it when we socialize, it is just customary to have a drink or food, right? So I always say it's much bigger than the drink. I mean, the drink is that gateway, right? Because when you're in an event and you don't know somebody, it just helps to have something in your hand, and then also when you're taste testing, which we do at all of our events, it gives you a barrier to entry to talk to someone, right? You can say, "Oh, that tasted too
Yeah,
spicy,"
exactly.
or yeah, whatever, or "This reminded me of that trip that I took to Italy," because so it's a conversation starter just like alcohol does, right? So I have really seen that it truly is a social lubricant, obviously just without the alcohol. And that's why I'm so passionate about it. And I sell them because I'm like, I can stand behind selling them because they're not bad for you, right? But they're still a connector and they're just a way to loosen up and like have a good time and enjoy something really good. And to be honest, I think that's a big reason why they're taking off because people still want elevated experiences with a drink.
I love the term you just used, a social lubricant. It's like that's so
Yeah,
cool because it's like it's so awkward. I remember one at one of your events, just standing there and there was this other woman standing there, and then it was awkward just striking up a conversation with a complete
right.
stranger. But then my wife came in and she's just like Miss down to earth, like talks to everybody she just met, like they've been best friends for 10 years or something. And she just started up this conversation. They got on all these interesting threads, and I was able to join in the conversation. And it was just nice to be standing around, but like, yeah, just like having the drink, because everything, like you said, every social event is about food or
Yep.
drink. And I mean, that's just how society, I mean, and it's not just our society, I mean, around the world.
Yeah.
And for thousands of years, as long as we've had recorded history, it's like people ate together and had conversation and had meaningful things. And in this, you can even find out things about other people. I mean, maybe it's a different culture, maybe it's different, maybe they're from a different place in the world or something. It's like you get to hear their stories and find out what they're interested in. And it's like that's just
Yeah.
like so cool. It's a lot bigger than just my world.
That's exactly, and that's been the coolest part about being on the other side of the bar. I sample all of our drinks, and it's just one of the lines we use is called Mocktail Club, and her drinks are all inspired by like different regions of the world or different countries.
Mm.
So, it's just super fun it really opens conversation that you normally wouldn't have, and it kinda steers you away from that, like, stale networking vibes of, "What do you do for a living?" You know what I
Yes.
mean? Like, it's just which isn't bad in itself, but, like, one of the new ones is Bali Breeze, and it's got all these different flavors like lychee and all this cool stuff, and so when you're talking about the flavors, you hear about someone's like, "Oh, I went to this place," and then, it just organically opens up the gate to have a better conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even when you say that, the thing that comes immediately in my mind is I've been to Bali. I've eaten lychees. It's like,
Oh my
let's talk
gosh.
about that experience. That was so fun. It's like,
Oh, see, that's perfect. Like, that's the perfect example, and that's a great transition because I would have never known that because I'm not gonna randomly ask you, "Have you been to Bali?" But you could tell me that story at a cocktail party, right? And then that's fun, and it's just yeah, I don't know, it's a great way to connect people organically.
oh my gosh, that is so true. I mean, just thinking about that thread, that could go
Uh-huh.
on for a ways. That could
Yes,
lead to different foods, the friends, the
yes.
birds that I saw there, the photographs that I took back when I was a photographer, doing that
Mm,
regular. I mean, I still take photos, but back then I was doing it all the time. And I mean,
yes,
something like that, and that could just open all kinds of fun discussion and learning really about
yes.
about each other and appreciation.
Yes,
Things that
exactly, and so what's happening there, it's the same thing that's happening with alcohol, and, less luckily, at least we're not inhibiting ourselves with alcohol, but we're releasing oxytocin, right? So we're this bonding chemical where I'm like, "Oh, that's so cool, you were a photographer and you like birds and nature, I do too," right? So, like, I'm seeing you, you're seeing me, and then it just takes the conversation into these beautiful places that so really I look at the drinks as like a conduit, right? Like a space holder to help people connect. And honestly, in a very, I always say this in a twist of irony. It is very similar to a bar, an alcoholic bar or alcoholic drinks, right? Like the things that are happening are similar. We're just not having the toxic effects or the after effects of getting drunk. Like we're still present. But that bonding, because think about it, when you're drinking, you're bonding with people, not all the time, but a lot of times in a social setting. So honestly, we are trying to recreate a lot of those settings just in a healthier social environment.
And I love that. And then you're a lot clearer in the
Yes.
conversation too. It's like I
Yes.
remember one. This is a funny story, but I remember one time a friend of mine and I went up and did a tour of the wineries in Virginia,
Yeah.
up in the mountains, and we got to this one. I think it was Trump Winery back in the time. I think it's changed
Yeah.
names now. But we went there and started talking to this other couple, and I told them about this story of this wine tour that I did in France. And then when I got to the end of the story, I started over again and told them the exact same story, and they just very
Yes.
patiently listed through. And then
Yep.
when we were done, my friend said to me, "Do you know you just told them that same story, that exact same story twice?" I was like, "Nope, had no clue. They just seemed
Yep.
interested." But
Yep.
so it makes it avoids that kind of thing. Uh,
100%.
so
Oh, yeah.
it's a lot less embarrassing. My face is red even telling the story. It was like it's so crazy,
Oh.
but
So, I mean, I can't tell you how many embarrassing things I've said, done, or, the
right.
anxiety the next morning of what did I say? Who did I call?
Oh
What
my
did I
gosh,
I
right?
mean, it's
Drunk
just
texting.
it's yeah, I just all the time. One of my most infamous ones is I called my ex-boyfriend's parents. No idea why. Like truly, because when you're drunk, who knows? I know. I don't know why, and I didn't have any connection to them, didn't wanna talk to them, it's who knows why you do that stuff, but that's just an example of, like that's why I love, like, socializing without alcohol, and I would love to bring this up with you because you love all of this stuff, but I'm reading a book right now called The Art and Science of Connection, and it's
Mm,
talking about a 3rd term, so we talk about mental health, physical health, but we don't often talk enough about social health.
right.
Our social health across the board for all age groups is really in decline, and we're not even aware of how lonely we are.
Oh my
And
God.
the book doesn't talk about the alcohol component, but what I'd like to add to that is anytime that we're inhibited, the social connection is really not as deep or as life-giving as it could or should be. And so we really in the heart of what we're trying to do with free life, and this all goes back to what we were talking about, is it's much more than just about not drinking. It's about creating social health for all of us because there's those 3 pillars, right? Mental, physical, and social. And that's what makes up a thriving community and human beings. So,
Absolutely, and even like at one of the groups recently that you did, up there at is it Assemble or Assembly? I always forget.
oh, assembly. Yeah.
Assembly.
Assembly.
Okay, so we were at assembly. I mean, that was wonderful. I mean, we were up at the rooftop, and
Yep.
we had a cellist from the Virginia
Yeah.
Symphony come in, and it was
Yep.
really awesome. That was an epic thing. But I looked around, and there was a couple of people that I didn't know, and they looked like they
Yeah.
didn't know anybody. And
Yep.
so one of the guys there, I went back and he was making everybody else was either talking in a group of people they knew, or there was a couple of people kind of by themselves, but they were on their phones. And so he was not. He was looking around the room like trying to make eye contact with people to see who he could talk to. And so
Yeah.
I caught his eye, and so I just went over and sat beside him and introduced myself, and we struck up a conversation. And turns out he was like, well, I was like, well, how'd you come here? I said, have you been here before? He's like, no, it's my first time. I said, how'd you get here? He said, well, my daughter is a friend of Christina's, and she brought me. And it
Very
turned
cool.
out it was Moni.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, and we recognized each other because we had talked before at an
Yep.
event. So we're like, oh my gosh, you're his daughter, and so that was an interesting thing. And
That's
then
so cool.
another thing, this is funny. I'm have a laugh about this. My wife and I have laughed about it. RJ and I have laughed about it. But there was another woman sitting there kind of by herself, and I was really surprised because she looked pretty bright and personable and pretty. And so I just went up to her. I was like, "Hey, how you doing? You?" I was like, "You got great hair," because she does have great hair. And I mean, like the Troy Polamalu thing, only on a
Yeah,
woman.
yeah.
And it's like, so I went up to her and I started to strike up a conversation a little bit. And then RJ came up and I was like, oh, that's his girlfriend. And I'm like,
Oh, yeah,
so I
she's
said,
beautiful.
oh, I know. And I told her, I told him, I said, I was so not flirting with your girl. And he's like, I don't care, flirt with her. I'm like, no, that's really not what I'm doing. She just looked alone, which was
Right.
surprising to me. And so I didn't want anybody to sit there and not have anybody to talk to. So it's fun. It's fun to do that,
Yes.
to strike up
Yes.
those conversations with other people. And even, I mean,
I love
somebody
it.
might come and they do feel alone. Cause like you were talking about loneliness, that is like epidemic, in my opinion, in our
Epidemic.
world.
It is. And I love that what you said. We're working on figuring that out because social situations are hard. I'm an extrovert and I still get social anxiety. We all do. So I try to control for that and teach people like we got like when we introduce ourselves, it's okay if it's awkward. An awkward moment, as far as I know in history, has never killed anyone. So if we can just get through it together, right? And acknowledge the elephant in the room that we all feel a little insecure and weird. You know what I mean? Like it's okay. And really, like, that's why I love Free Life. And it's not just me, there's other groups popping up that are doing this, but like, we really are going against the grain and learning how to socialize without substances. And that's new for culture. I mean, obviously, people we socialize all the time without alcohol, you know what I mean? But in a party setting, in a networking setting, like, these are new norms that we're establishing, and it can be awkward or messy sometimes. And I often encourage people, let's sit in that. But I love what you did, and I encourage people all the time, like, go up to people you don't know. It might feel weird, but I'd love to share this statistic with you. I'm terrible with the numbers, but it's something called like the liking gap. I don't know if you've heard of this, but social scientists have studied that we basically assume that people don't want to talk to us more than they actually do. So they took people
Right.
on the New York subway, and they told, it was like a controlled group, and they said, you have to go start a conversation with a random person every day for a month. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something like this, right? And people were terrified, but they did it. Long story short, they reported at the end that they felt almost everyone felt better than they thought they would. They thought it was going to be scary, or that people would be annoyed or not want to talk to them. And so the social scientists concluded that we all assume that people don't want to talk to us, but what we find is that those everyday interactions, people are actually more hungry to talk to you than, like, we're all looking for connection. We want to talk more. Does that make sense? I was like,
Absolutely. And it feels
the
so
liking
good
gap.
to strike up that random,
Yes.
to break through that barrier and strike up that conversation. Like, I try to walk every day, or as many days as I can.
Yep.
But when I do that, I'll pass people, and it's amazing to me how many people don't even want to look at you. And
Yes.
so I'll go out of my way, especially if I'm in a good mood. I'll be like, hey, how you doing?
Good.
Whatever. And most of the people, they'll be passing me looking like they've been sucking green persimmons or something, looking,
Yes.
and then
I know.
and then they'll be like, oh, hey, how you? I mean, they'll break into it. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot
Sure.
of them will break into a smile. They say, hey, how you doing? I'll say, say something maybe about their
Yes.
dog, or beating the heat or the what. I mean, just a little
A
innocuous thing,
little
but
something.
it's fun to have a human connection and somebody
We need
that
it.
actually sees you and acknowledges
Yep.
you. And
Yep.
you mentioned a minute ago, I wanted to circle back around to that oxytocin, because people think
Mm.
of that as like the love molecule and whatnot.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it can have that, it can have a romantic thing, but it doesn't have to. You can get oxytocin, and it just makes you feel connected and belonging and bonding. I think belonging is so huge, but I mean, you can get that from an animal, having a pet that
Yes.
releases oxytocin, or from just having another human connection that lets you know you're not alone in this world. Uh,
Yes.
Somebody else. And then so often when we talk about these things that we feel, it's like, oh my gosh, we all feel that. We could start a
Yes.
club.
Yes.
It's
Like,
like,
"Oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone." Like, I know we all think we're so chronically alone or broken, and then you talk to someone
right.
else, and that, like, to the theme of today, what are we doing different, or, adding on to Free Life, that's a big part of it, is how do we, like, I don't know the right term for it, but socially engineer these spaces where we leave with that high feeling. Because a lot of us are seeking to alter our state of being, which honestly, I don't think in itself is that bad. But what if we could do it with healthy interactions with people instead of chemicals, right? So that's that idea. As I see it all the time, sober storytelling is one of our best events. And like almost every time, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I feel so good. And it's amazing because it's really just a simple concept. Like, we're just being vulnerable, sharing, and witnessing the humanity in each other, and then laughing along with it. And it's like a recipe for magic. And then everyone leaves feeling amazing. So I'm like, we just got to do more of it.
It really is. It's just so amazing. I mean, and just the stories. I mean, and some of the people are like very vulnerable. Like
Yep.
RJ, he's very
Yeah.
transparent and very vulnerable about his story. And
Yep.
it's like when he tells the story about looking in the mirror and going, "I
Mm.
hate you." It's like, who can't
Mm.
relate to that at some point?
Oh, for
I mean, not,
sure.
not that we hate
Yeah.
our whole lives, but there are certainly aspects about that. It's like we just really don't always like who we are, and we can relate
Oh,
to. So it's like that's really an
always.
icebreaker. But I just got to tell you, as a coach and trainer, it's like I love asking questions in groups and just getting responses. John Maxwell says that every person we meet, we should see an invisible 10 on their forehead on a scale of
Mm.
1 to 10, to see them as a 10, and then to
Mm.
the first 30 seconds we meet them, find something good to say about them.
I
You
love
know,
that.
and one
I
of the
love
things
that.
I've been trying to do, and this just transformed cultures, friendships, families, whatever, is calling out the values that I see in them. Like I know
Mm.
one thing about you is you are so resilient.
Mm,
You've been through a couple of different people that you've been working with Free Life now that have been helping you. I know your husband was deployed. It's like you have just, and that's a big deal. We were just talking about that before we started. But those things are big deals, and it's like,
thank
but
you.
but transitioning and learning to pivot while you keep
Mm,
the main thing.
yep.
That's a big deal. So I mean, just calling that out, you're like super resilient. So, and
Thank
I
you.
just totally respect that. And I mean, but if we get to know each other just a little bit, there can be some kind of value. You are so kind.
Mm,
You seem like a really compassionate person, or you seem like a really good person to manage things and keep the details in alignment, or whatever it is that they happen to do. And B, it's like we can call out some really good things with that, and then people are like, oh wow, somebody actually saw that in me. That's amazing. I didn't say that myself, but they saw it.
yes, yes, and we're all dying to be seen. I love that, right? I think we know we need it, and now more than ever, with technology and be isolation being what it is, the basics stand true. We need each other and we need community. And I'm fascinated with how community has shifted and is changing. And I believe, and it's really cool, but it is different. And we just have to be aware of it because like we're not going to church like we used to, or bowling leagues or clubs or things. So things are changing. And I think at the heart of it, humans are the same. We still need each other. We may just have to shift and change what community looks like or how we create it.
Right. And just finding out, I was just doing a trauma informed care course recently, and they said the question is not what's wrong with you.
Mm,
The right question is what's your story?
mm,
So the more we find out what a person's story is, I mean, even say somebody that likes to drink a lot, it's like, okay, not what's wrong with you for drinking so much, don't you know it's bad for you? And it's like, hey, what's your story?
mm,
What's gone on in your life? What are you maybe like I was? I mean, when I was drinking heavily for some
yeah,
times in my life, I mean, I was trying to escape from certain things.
yes.
And so it's like, what's the story? What was the underlying thing? And like I have one friend that says, I don't like to should on people. It's like,
Mm,
a lot of if it's that kind of thing, we're going to stay away from that. Uh,
yes.
I mean, as you know, because I gave my story there one time about a year ago, but it's like, there was a strong religious factor in that. And it was so many shoulds and guilts, and you're just not good enough. You're just not doing it right. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. You should be doing the other, instead of like, well, if love is conditional, then it's no love at all.
That's
It's
good.
like, to be unconditional love, it can't have conditions. Duh.
Mm. Yeah. Right.
And so
Right.
that's what we need for each other. It's just like, let's understand each other. Let's understand your story. Unpack that for me. Tell me
Mm.
about it. I'm interested. It's like, so doing that. But back to the progression of Free Life. So I know personally that you got a lot of different types of events going on. So what are some of the things that have materialized over the past year that didn't exist a year ago when we did the podcast?
Yeah, I would say so. A big one. It was there a little bit, but we started out doing something called cold plunging kombucha, and it was literally just cold plunging and drinking my friend's kombucha.
Wow.
Yeah, it's morphed into like this really cool event. We just did it last week, called Wellness Saturday, and it's like a whole day now where we do yoga, breath work, meditation, cold plunging, still healthy food and drinks, and now we've made it like and during the summer warm months, it's gonna be a monthly event. And my neighbor next door, have a big backyard, is such a lovely human. He's let us like expand into his yard. So we've used his entire space to
Oh,
do two
cool.
sessions of yoga. And yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Wellness goes hand in hand with not drinking. I think, that community, we all draw the same kind of people. If you're not drinking, we are interested in very similar things. So that's been
Right.
a beautiful thing.
Self-care kind of things, or
Yeah,
actually
for
everything you just
sure.
described is I mean, it's like with the ice thing, so that scares me a little bit. I see Wim
It's
Hof do that
hard.
stuff and
Yeah.
whatnot. Yeah, I don't really necessarily want to get an ice bath. I mean, cold shower is enough for me. I just did
No,
my walk today because it's so hot outside. But
so hard.
so let me ask you, so if somebody hears that, like when I hear yoga, my
Yeah.
wife and I were going to try to do some stretches before bed recently,
Yeah.
so we pulled up some yoga YouTube things. And so all I managed to do, well, I mean, it was good. I liked it. I did it for a while, but then I found out that I'd like pulled a muscle in my leg under my knee, and
Oh,
I was
no.
not walking well. So and then I mean, these people are doing incredible things, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what in the world? That looks so
Right.
easy. I can't even kneel down and set on my heels. It's like, so if you've got somebody who's really not good at that and doesn't want to come and look like an idiot, what do you have different levels, or how does that work? What would you say to
Yeah,
that person?
Yeah. My yoga instructor is super all inclusive. I mean, she has modifications that she does for everyone. So we did like 2 sessions actually. The events have gone, we make them all day now, like a 10 to 3 type thing.
Wow.
Yeah. The idea is just to come do community with each other. It's a really cool event. So yeah, she modifies everything or gives options for people. It's meant to be all levels.
Okay, so I know I love yoga nidra, but that's the one. That's
Yeah, I
not.
love yoga nidra too.
Yeah, you would always end up going to sleep, but it's like make my little nest and go to sleep.
Yeah.
I know that's the one, but I know the other ones are too. It's just like when we and my wife and I, just to be honest, we found some that were not as intense as what these ladies do. And I mean, the ladies we were watching are probably been doing it for like 30 years or something. They were
Oh, yeah.
extremely flexible and limber, and it's like, wow, that's like
Yeah.
that's going to take a minute. I don't think I'm ever going to get there. So,
Yeah, and the yoga community, and from what I've seen, I've done a lot of yoga over the years just for chronic pain, for anxiety, all the things. Like, it's not about skill level or what you can and can't do, right? It's more of a mindset. So even if you like, I love the yoga teacher I partner with. I mean, if anyone ever even wants to just sit and meditate during a flow where they don't feel like they can do it, then that's absolutely valid. I've done that before. I've stopped doing the session in the middle and then picked back up where I felt,
yeah.
appropriate. And that's, if you really dig deep into yoga, that's it. It's teaching you, just like meditation, to drop into your body and see what it needs. So it's not about I mean, some people use their practice like anything to push themselves, but that's not what we do.
Yeah, and you mentioned breath work too, and that's something I've been doing
Yeah.
a lot personally and
Oh,
sharing with
cool.
people recently. And it's like I am just amazed at how that can calm our nervous.
Yes.
It is
Yes.
like just, I mean, like instantaneously.
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Amen says that for people who have anxiety attacks and are prone to that, the very first line of defense if you're having an anxiety attack is to get your breath right. He said
Okay.
because that can just quiet everything and just
Yeah.
reset that central nervous system very easily. I mean, I can take three
Wow.
breaths,
Yeah.
and it's not hard to, especially the long exhale. That just
Yep.
that connects with our vagus nerve and the rest of our nervous system, and it just quiets that. It puts us in that
Mm.
rest and digest state with
Yep.
acetylcholine rather than that fight or flight with the norepinephrine. So it's like it's just
Mm.
amazing how that quiets that down. And so
That's
I
amazing.
love all these things you're talking about on the brain health side too, as well as the
Yeah.
actual social side.
Well, and it makes sense, right? Like everyone, people ask me a lot because I do a lot of events and I'm busy. Like, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, an event like that actually gives me energy. I mean, I'm
Right.
tired because it's work, but like when you're doing healthy practices with other people, I don't know how to explain it. It's just a beautiful, really cool thing. Like you said, I'm feeling all the good things, the oxytocin. When you're with healthy people in a healthy environment, rest and digest definitely kicks in. We're less likely to feel anxious when we see that we're safe and being seen and loved and it's a good environment. So it's cool.
Absolutely. And I mean, even like one of the things we haven't mentioned it yet, but then my wife and I do fairly regularly is like gratitude journaling. And sometimes
Mm,
even by ourselves, it's like that doesn't take any energy. I don't have to interact. I don't have to do anything except maybe pick up a pen and write a word on a piece of paper. But it's like, well, if I just think about like three things, if a person
yes,
just stops and goes, what three things are you good for? No, we're just going to sit here quietly, but we're all doing something different, but we're all with each other. We're together.
yes.
Like back in the day, people used to this one. My wife and I watch All Creatures Great and Small, the
Yeah.
remake. But there's a couple of scenes where they're just all sitting around the living room and they're all reading a book and they're all in their own
Mm,
little world. They're all together at the same time. It's
yes,
like how beautiful is that?
yes,
And my
it
wife
is.
and I have done different meditation things and then shared with each other what we experienced. Which has
Oh,
been really, really cool. And that's been a life changing thing that's happened some years ago, but we still talk about those images.
yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, meditation is so powerful, especially group meditation. We did it last time. We're having another one in September, and it's just such a cool experience to be with other people and hear their insights. Or
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, the other thing I'm trying to normalize, I have a fun story. I had a cocktail party like, I don't know, 2 months ago, and a friend of mine was there and she was like, I see that you have a bush that needs pruned. Do you mind if I go do it? And I was like, no, go do your thing. And I bring it up because she's like, "That felt, like, so weird," and I was like, "No, I love it." Like, I wanna create environments and community where we can show up as us or authentically as ourselves and be as weird or different as we want, and so she went and pruned the bush for me, and then she met a new friend because someone came over and saw her doing it, and they started
Wow.
bonding about a wildflower garden that he had, and so I'm just saying, like, I want to show up. I have two guiding principles for free life. I'm like, don't hurt yourself at an event and don't hurt others with our words or actions. Other
Right.
than that, do
Right.
what you want, right? Like, I think a lot of our social anxiety comes from, it's a theory I have of like, we put all these expectations and rules on ourselves and ways we need to show up and be, and that things we have to do. And I'm like, that's just exhausting, right? But if we could just let it go and like, yeah, if you want to go prune the bush or you want to go sit by yourself, like, have at it. Like, I want to create that kind of community for other people. And I also love what you said too. Sometimes we really don't need to talk. Maybe we just need to be with each other without talking. I think normalizing that too is a beautiful thing.
And I think that's a huge thing. And I mean, you may remember this author's name, Susan Cain. She
Yes.
wrote some years ago, she wrote a book called Quiet, The
Oh,
Power of
yes.
Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking. And then she most
Mm,
recently wrote a book called Bittersweet. And
I read that one.
she's actually started something that she calls the Church of the Quiet, where they just get together, people light a candle. They just, I mean, and it's not like this big normal religious
Sure.
churches. It's like or something, but it's like it's a church. It's like for the heart. It's like
Sure.
something with the heart of people who just want to get into that place and be in that place. And there's so many people who are a part of that now because that's what we want. We are
Yes.
burned out. We are tired. We are
You're
burned out
tired.
on life. I mean, life is hard. This life is
Is
hard
it?
right now, and so it's like just to be still and be quiet because we think people aren't going to appreciate who we are if they really know us. So then we try
Yep.
to pretend that we're somebody we're not, and then that's really a very soul wearying endeavor. So it's
Yeah.
really really nice to have these kinds of things where everybody can get together and just breathe the sigh,
Right.
breathe. And we don't do like AA. You don't do like AA and go around and go, my name's Jeff and I'm alcoholic because we don't want to
Right.
put that identity on ourselves or other people.
Right.
But it's like just realizing, okay, so we've all had this as a part of our life and we're all moving to a better place and we're doing it together. So hey, I might not even know you, but I know we're on the same journey. So
Yep.
hey, I you know, the recovering person in me or the alcohol free person really respects the alcohol person and you, the alcohol free person
Yes.
in you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And the through line that we have is that we're just, I say our tagline or something we've been saying a lot is we're forming deep connections without alcohol. Right. So
Wow.
yeah, it's really just seeing each other. Cause I think a lot of things also we have surface level conversations, or a lot of us have relationships or friendships or even marriages, whatever, where we are still lonely. Right. So we may live with someone and we're not really being seen. So like we're trying to figure out what does that look like. And a lot of it comes back to what you said is being intentional and asking those good questions and learning how to ask deep questions and see and hear people. And at the heart of that for me is not having alcohol because we can't see and hear people if we're drunk. And I'm not judging anyone. Don't get me like here, I did it for a decade. So like, I'm just, but it's like we're not that social health or social battery isn't being filled up if we're inebriated because we can't be present to witness or even remember the questions we asked.
Right. And getting at those deep parts, I mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but you just reminded me of, I was doing a training last week, and one of the ladies there shared that her husband had committed suicide 24
Mm,
years ago. And
mhm.
she had spent 24 years thinking she was the reason for that.
Oh,
And I told her, I said, I really doubt that. I said, what I
yeah.
imagine is that there were some wounds that were so deep that he
Yep.
didn't know how to get them out and get help for them. And eventually he just gave up. And it had
Sure.
nothing to do with you. And
Right.
I said, is that helpful? And she was like, yes, absolutely. And I was like,
Oh,
wow.
yeah.
And just this little, and we were in a group talking to her. She just brought it up
Right.
in a group that I was training with. And so I was like, wow. And this little conversation in that something that had been just a persistent pain for 24 years got some healing to it. I was like, that's just amazing. And
It
but
is.
so many of us are like that. It's like we figure that if we're the person we really are, have the problem we really have, then struggle with, people won't accept us. And so
Mhm.
we just don't bring it out. We just suffer silently. And some people make the decision they're just done suffering.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
you know. So, but
Yeah.
anyway, so that's why I love what you're doing. So, hey, do you want to talk about any upcoming events you got going on?
Yeah, I'm trying to think so we do have we're doing a wellness day again in September, which is super exciting. And then we have, you made me think, gosh, I've just been doing a lot. I forget half the time what I'm doing. But a series we've launched is the Conscious Cocktail Lounge, and that's been so cool. It's just event where we bring our bar, have like cocktails that we've made, and then we sell them, and then we give 10% to a nonprofit, which is so cool. This month we are doing, if people are local, the Elizabeth River Trail. So we'll be
Oh, cool.
on, yeah, we'll be on the Elizabeth River Trail at Jeff Robertson Park on September 12th.
Oh, neat. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad to know about that. So, and what
Yeah.
September 12th and what time?
6 to 8 and or 6 to 9. And yeah, actually that's going to be a great one because if so we don't and we're donating 10% of our proceeds to the nonprofit. And so we try to do these monthly where we pick a nonprofit, highlight the nonprofit, because I believe in using the drinks for good, right? So it's
Right.
like if I win, we all win. So yeah, I mean, any if you we'd love you to come and then also help us spread the word, just because the more people we get, the better. But it'll be fun. We'll have a food truck and live music, and we're really expanding it. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, make sure if when you post that, make sure I'm tagged in that so that I can
yeah,
grab that and further
yeah.
share it for you. But
Thank you.
and I'll get your links and put it in the description.
Yeah.
But just what would be the best place? If you were going to recommend one place for people to follow you, where would that be?
Yeah, Facebook or Instagram. I would say we're most active on Facebook and Instagram, and it's just Free Life LLC. We are undergoing a website redo, which is super exciting. So we're actually getting like all of that updated. So we have our services and events. Look, you got to grow small bit by bit.
Yeah, well, that is the truth. But so it's Free Life, all one word, FREELIFE LLC, all one
Yep.
word.
Yep.
Okay.
On all platforms, but Instagram and Facebook are the best places.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I see your posts frequently. I saw the one in the backyard with the yoga and
Oh,
whatnot. So,
coll
like that looked like fun, but yeah. So
Yeah.
you're definitely getting the word out there. So, well, hey, Christina, I appreciate the time so much and the conversation. This is just like obviously this is what can happen at a free life group. It's like this is just the
Yes.
tip of the iceberg. There are obviously a bunch of strings we could pull on and have more
Yeah.
conversation about a lot of the things we just touched on. So,
That's great.
that can happen. You can't do it, can't talk about everything in one conversation, but you can have multiple conversations, and that's exactly what you're giving the paradigm for your
Yeah.
with free life. So you can have some fun new conversations. So well, thank you so much for being on, and everybody else. I really encourage you if you're in the local area, which is uh, Southampton Roads in Virginia. If you're here, just keep an eye out for these things and then come check out a group. I imagine you will have fun. It's not like what you think of when you think of any kind of a sober group. It is not what you probably called to mind. It is probably
That's
very
right.
different than that and a lot more fun. So
That's right.
we can all support each other. So thanks so much. And Christina, thank you again for being on.
Thank you.